Ancient cures in modern jars. You open your refrigerator, casually scanning past the cartons and jars, but something prompts you to slow down. You linger a little longer over the simple, humble items you usually ignore: a tub of plain yogurt, a jar of sauerkraut half covered by a leftover casserole dish. You might not realize it now, but these aren't just food items, they're centuries-old tools of healing. Tools that, for older adults like you, may be more valuable now than ever. Your gut isn't just a system. It's a society, a teeming city of trillions of microbes working quietly, faithfully, day after day. And like any city, it needs balance, governance, and peacekeeping. Fermented foods have been part of that governing structure for ages. Not because they were trendy, but because they worked. Let's begin with sauerkraut. You might think of it as just a tangy side dish, but fermented cabbage has a rich medicinal history. Roman soldiers reportedly consumed sauerkraut not just to preserve food during long marches, but also to maintain gut health under battlefield stress. Even Pliny the Elder, a Roman naturalist, praised its health benefits for digestion. The quirky truth: some medieval folk believed sauerkraut could ward off evil spirits. In fact, certain Eastern European communities hung jars of fermenting cabbage near windows to protect the home. Whether that had anything to do with the smell will leave to your imagination. From a scientific perspective, what makes sauerkraut powerful is its lactobacillus content, a naturally occurring bacterium that aids digestion, modulates inflammation, and supports immunity. But here's where modern scholars split. Some argue that the pasteurization process in most store-bought jars destroys the beneficial microbes. Others claim even pasteurized sauerkraut contains compounds that still aid digestion and immune health. The debate continues, and you find yourself in the middle, not as a bystander, but as a participant in your own care. Now, shift your attention to yogurt. Not the kind dressed up with fruit on the bottom or sugary vanilla swirls. Real yogurt, the thick, tart kind that makes your cheeks pull in slightly when you take that first bite. That yogurt. Historians often attribute its origins to ancient Mesopotamia, where herders stored milk in animal skins, unknowingly fermenting it into the first probiotic food. Over time, civilizations across the globe independently discovered their own versions of cultured dairy: India's dahi, the Middle East's laban, and Eastern Europe's matsoni. Interestingly, in early Ayurvedic medicine, yogurt was often mixed with honey or spices and used to treat bowel irregularities. And the quirky part: some ancient Indian texts advised not eating yogurt at night, believing it would clog the mental channels during dreams. Fringe as that may sound, modern science does acknowledge that gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters that impact mood and sleep. Coincidence? Maybe, but worthy of reflection, absolutely. You might wonder why so many cultures, so distant from each other, arrived at the same conclusion: milk plus time equals healing. Perhaps they were following the spirit before they knew its name. Today, there's a robust debate in nutritional science over how much live culture survives the acidic journey through your stomach. Some researchers argue that only a fraction makes it to the intestines intact, questioning the real efficacy of commercial yogurt. Others counter that even dead microbes leave behind beneficial postbiotics compounds that help regulate gut health in subtle but important ways. So, what should you do? You spoon the yogurt slowly. You chew your kraut mindfully. You learn to eat like someone who's not just feeding a body but sustaining a system, a temple, a city within. It's not about volume, it's about rhythm. Healing your gut in older age isn't about flooding it, it's about nourishing it consistently. Fermentation, after all, takes time, and your body, much like a well-aged wine or a matured faith, responds best to patience. As you clear your bowl, you don't feel full, you feel fortified. Because these aren't modern inventions. They're ancient companions, and as your digestion slows with age, their quiet wisdom becomes even more necessary. You smile because the answer wasn't some exotic superfood. It was in your fridge all along. The science and spirit of the gut. You stand at the kitchen counter, gently shaking the bottle in your hand. The word kefir dances across the label, foreign, even mysterious. It fizzes softly when you twist the cap, like it's whispering before speaking. You take a cautious sip, tangy, slightly sour. Not unpleasant dash, just ... alive. Kefir is more than a drink. It's a story bottled in milk. For centuries, the nomads of the Caucasus Mountains prized these strange kefir grains, gelatinous clumps of bacteria and yeast passed down through generations. Legend says they were a divine gift, a secret too sacred to share. In fact, Russian agents were once reportedly sent on a covert mission to acquire kefir grains from local tribes, who guarded them like sacred relics. It sounds absurd, like a fermented fairy tale. But every myth carries a seed of meaning. Perhaps the tribes weren't just protecting microbes, they were preserving a lifestyle, a quiet truth. Health doesn't always arrive in a pill, sometimes it bubbles. Kefir contains dozens of strains of beneficial bacteria and yeast. Compared to yogurt, it's far more diverse in its microbial population, which may explain its growing reputation in gut therapy. You picture it like a spiritual revival inside your intestines, new voices joining the choir, singing harmony into previously inflamed silence, but as always, science debates. Some researchers praise kefir as one of the most powerful probiotic foods available. Others question its consistency, noting that homemade and store-bought versions can vary dramatically in microbe content. The academic argument continues, but your body doesn't wait for consensus, it responds to experience. And your experience says, something shifts when I drink this. You set the kefir down and reach for another food born in stillness, miso. A spoonful of it swirled into hot water becomes something deeply calming. The smell is earthy, grounding like a slow morning walk after rain, and that's fitting. Because miso is deeply rooted in ritual. Japanese monks have eaten miso soup daily for centuries, often in silence. It was believed to promote calmness, spiritual balance, and inner discipline. During World War II, hospitals in Japan served miso to help protect patients from radiation damage, a practice still remembered, though not universally verified. Here's your quirky moment. In certain Zen sects, young monks were once taught to stir miso clockwise only, believing it preserved the life direction of the food. Was it symbolic? Was it microbiological? Or was it simply reverence, a gentle act teaching slowness in a world that demanded speed? From a nutritional standpoint, miso is rich in vitamin K2, isoflavones, and beneficial enzymes. But it also contains high sodium, which sparks scholarly disagreements. Some experts say the fermentation process offsets the salt's negative effects, others remain cautious, citing blood pressure risks in older adults. You read both views, nod, and return to your bowl, knowing wisdom often lives between extremes. You take a few careful sips, and something about this warm, cloudy liquid feels like prayer. Now you turn to tempeh, a food that looks more like an art project than a meal. A beige cake of soybeans, held together by a white webbing of friendly mold. It's not pretty, but it's profound. Tempeh originates from Indonesia, where it's still a daily staple. Traditionally, villagers wrap cooked soybeans in banana leaves and leave them to ferment naturally. After a day or two in the warm air, a culture of Rhizopus oligosporus binds them into a single, firm slab. It's chewy, nutty, satisfying, especially when pan-fried with care. And here's something fascinating. Indonesian folklore holds that mothers would watch how quickly their children took to tempeh as a sign of future intelligence. A smart child, they said, would crave fermented foods. Modern science may not endorse that superstition, but studies do support tempeh's role in supporting cognitive health, thanks to its high protein, B vitamins, and fermentation-derived peptides. Still, even here, scholars argue. There's an ongoing debate about whether tempeh truly contains bioavailable B12 or if it's merely trace contamination from other sources. You read the journals. Shrug slightly and chew anyway, because here's the deeper truth: you don't eat only for data. You eat for nourishment, for rhythm, for healing. And with each bite of tempeh, each sip of miso, each gulp of kefir, you're reminded your gut is not just a digestive tube, it's a sanctuary. Science calls it the gut-brain axis, the intimate communication between your intestines and your mind. What you eat affects how you feel, and how you feel affects what you digest. Stress slows motility, fear alters acidity, loneliness suppresses immunity. But peace, gratitude, these too are medicine. So you begin to eat not as a chore but as communion, not just for calories but for clarity. You whisper a prayer, not because it changes the food but because it changes you. You thank God for bacteria, for soybeans. For tribes who listened to nature before it had a name, you honor the science. You welcome the mystery, and with every meal, you participate in something both ancient and alive. Your body isn't just aging. It's fermenting, softening, concentrating, deepening. And that's not a decline, that's wisdom ripening. Eating as sacred routine, you're not just hungry. You're looking for something steady, something that doesn't flash or rush or change its mind. You're searching for rhythm, something your body and your soul can return to again and again. So, you do something you haven't done in a while. You sit down to eat, not scroll, not skim, not speed through a sandwich in front of the TV. You sit, and you breathe. The table is cleared, the food is simple, and it feels sacred. This is where healing begins, not just in the gut, but in the pace of how you treat it. In monastic life, meals were a form of prayer, not just because they were quiet, but because they were intentional. Bread was broken slowly, soup was stirred patiently, and fermented foods, whether cabbage, beans, or milk, were often a part of the daily ritual, not because monks were microbiologists, but because they knew how to listen to the body and to God at the same time. Here's your mainstream historical reference. Saint Benedict, in his famous rule, emphasized the importance of moderation, routine, and respect at the table. Meals were structured, scheduled, and deeply valued. The food was simple, often plant-based, and yes, frequently fermented. The body was never seen apart from the spirit. Contrast that with modern life, where food is rushed, skipped, or overdone. You eat in cars, at desks, standing at counters. And then you wonder why your stomach revolts, why it's bloated, why your bowels complain, why digestion slows down as your mind speeds up. Now let's swing wide with a quirky tradition in a small village in rural Georgia, the country, not the U.S. state. Elders gather every morning to share pickled garlic and cultured yogurt with warm cornmeal bread. They believe it sets the gut to music for the rest of the day. The oldest in the village is 109. Coincidence? Hard to say, but maybe not everything strange is silly. You chuckle, but then you notice something. The people who eat slow live slow. And the people who live slow live long. And what does science say? Well, it's still debating. There's an entire branch of nutritional psychology studying whether how you eat affects what you absorb. Some researchers argue that mindful eating, slower bites, longer chewing, intentional breathing actually improves digestion by priming the vagus nerve and releasing more enzymes. Others say it's negligible, that what you eat matters far more than how. But you're starting to believe it's not either or. It's both, because when you eat like your body matters, you start treating your whole self like it matters. You pour a small bowl of yogurt, you sprinkle it with flax or drizzle it with honey. Not for sweetness, for sacredness. You chew your tempeh slowly, grateful that something so plain can be so rich. You sip your miso quietly. It warms your throat, and then something settles deeper. Your shoulders relax. Your thoughts unclench. You begin to see eating as more than nutrition. It's formation, it's habit, it's covenant. You start asking, what else in life have I been rushing through? Conversations, prayers, healing, God didn't create your body to digest chaos. He made it to digest presence, and fermented foods teach you that. They are the slowest foods, they require waiting, patience. Surrender to time, they aren't microwaved. They're matured, and so are you. Here's the deeper reflection: your body isn't broken. It's responding to stress, to speed, 2 years of ignoring its whispers. But when you eat with love and faith and slowness, your body hears you say, "I haven't forgotten you," and that ... is healing. So here's your invitation: not to overhaul your entire diet overnight, but to begin one sacred practice. Eat one fermented food per day, slowly and with prayer. Let that be your gentle restart. Start with sauerkraut on your salad, a spoonful of kefir after your walk, a bowl of miso instead of another cup of coffee, a piece of tempeh next to your steamed vegetables, yogurt before bed. Tiny, daily choices, each one a form of communion. And maybe, over time, your gut will stop shouting, your bowels will stop fighting. Your body will say, "Thank you," and your spirit will say, "I feel whole again," because you're not just eating food. You're participating in resurrection, in micro-renewals that echo a greater promise, that nothing broken stays broken when tended with care. And in that quiet, fermented grace, you heal.